Do I 20F stay friends with my ex? 18F. I recognize that many of your reactions may be negative, and I fully understand and respect that viewpoint. However, life is not simply about saying no and moving forward. I genuinely believe that I am seeking reassurance, understanding, and sound advice regarding the possibility of remaining friends with my ex. In summary, my ex blocked me on all platforms after our breakup, and I reciprocated by blocking her. Eventually, she managed to find a way to contact me again, offering a heartfelt apology. We resumed our conversations, but I made it clear that we would never be a couple again. Now, I find myself uncertain about the possibility of reverting to friendship with her. Some background information. We were in a long-distance relationship, approximately a 3-hour flight apart. We initially connected online, bonding over shared interests, hobbies, values, and tastes. For a time, we were best friends until romantic feelings developed, leading us to become a couple. I even took a part-time job to save money for a visit, allowing us to spend the summer together, which turned out to be the most memorable summer of my young life. The 3 weeks we spent together were magical. She was the kindest, most understanding and caring girlfriend I could have wished for. We had a wonderful time together, both in person and over text and calls throughout our relationship. However, in the last 2 to 3 months, things began to deteriorate. Her small, affectionate gestures started to diminish, and she seemed less committed to maintaining the relationship. I took on most of the planning for our dates, frequently reminding her of our plans and suggesting new activities to keep things fresh, but my efforts often went unnoticed. She appeared satisfied with our old routine, where we would return home from school, prepare lunch, and then watch a show together. I emphasize, watch together, because I often observed her playing games on her phone or being distracted, making it feel like I was the only one truly engaged. I expressed my feelings of neglect and invisibility a few times, but while she promised to change, she often became defensive, insisting that she wasn't superhuman and couldn't devote all her attention to me. Those arguments were deeply hurtful, as I felt unacknowledged, and each one left a small crack in my heart. There were moments, however, when she did make an effort. After one specific fight, where I emphasized that my concerns weren't about her character, but about her not meeting my emotional needs, she genuinely attempted to treat me as a romantic partner again. I began receiving good morning and good night texts without having to ask, and she showed me affection and awareness of my feelings once more. I felt elated, deeply in love with her again. But after a month of this positive change, we had another disagreement. I allowed her space to cool off, but a few hours later, she sent me a lengthy message expressing that she felt tethered to her phone because of me, as if she were on a leash and unable to be her true self. She indicated she was considering breaking up. I responded, suggesting that we could work things out by expressing our needs and respecting each other's boundaries. However, she replied that she was unsure if she wanted to continue since our relationship was deteriorating so quickly. That moment was when I emotionally detached from the relationship, as her words shattered my heart into countless pieces and stayed with me. After a few days, she proposed that we return to our previous dynamic as if the feeling trapped conversation had never occurred. I couldn't accept that. I kept wondering, why are you still conversing with me if I make you feel confined? I started feeling less eager and enthusiastic about hearing her share her day or her new experiences, and without realizing it, I began to put some distance between us. Technically, we were still together at that juncture, but it no longer felt that way. We stopped discussing our future or making plans, merely engaging in daily conversations, sharing memes and catching up on each other's lives, occasionally having a show on in the background. While it was still enjoyable, it lacked the excitement it once had, and I lost all my passion for her. I became increasingly bitter and resentful due to her minimal affection. Although she requested we work on the relationship, I initially tried to invest effort, but as I watched her act as if our past conversations had never occurred or that she was hesitant to get close to me, I became somewhat petty. I ceased making an effort to reconnect, instead adopting a mindset of, I'll contribute as much effort as you do, which meant hardly any effort at all. This continued for several weeks. Still, the breakup felt like a betrayal. At the beginning of February, I lost a pet who had been with me since I was 7. She was my beloved companion, and my grief was overwhelming. During my darkest hour, I sought comfort from her, clearly expressing my need for support and for someone to reassure me that, "I know it's hard right now, but everything will be all right." Instead, she told me, "You should not shy away from the pain. My giving you a pat on the back and putting a small band-aid on this massive wound won't help," leaving me stunned. I reiterated my desire for reassurance, yet she maintained that her advice was what I needed and became upset with me for not accepting it, leading her to end our relationship. She abandoned me when I needed her the most, making me feel as if I had lost not one, but two significant beings in my life. She blocked me on all platforms without offering any final words. It was excruciating. I found myself grieving and crying daily as I came to terms with the likelihood of never hearing from her again and losing both my girlfriend and my best friend. However, online advice generally suggested blocking and moving on, emphasizing that I should not allow her back into my life. So, I did block and delete her from everything we shared, an action that was painful but gradually became more bearable. When Valentine's Day arrived, I decided to treat myself, enjoying a lovely self-date night with a bath, candlelight, chocolates, a drink, a face mask, and my favorite music playing. In that moment, I felt at peace with the fact that things had ended and considered the possibility of never hearing from her again a relief. I realized I needed to focus on myself and prioritize self-love since she had not given me nearly enough. While reflecting during the bath, I recognized that throughout the relationship, I had been the one making sacrifices and always putting in the effort while she barely reciprocated. I saw how I had grown weary of her, concluding that our separation was indeed for the best. After that, I went my own way. Thus, I was taken aback when I received an email from her on the 16th, breaking the no contact. The message contained a lengthy apology for everything that had transpired. She expressed regret for leaving me during my most vulnerable moment and for not listening to my needs. It seemed evident that she had made a considerable effort to reach me, choosing email as her method of contact, as I had only mentioned it once or twice some time ago. Regrettably, I must admit that I allowed her back into my life. We discussed the fact that I had lost all romantic feelings for her and stated that we could never be a couple again, but I reassured her that she remained dear to me. She suggested, almost pleadingly with a great deal of self-loathing, that we attempt to be friends instead. I took some time to think it over and ultimately decided to give it a chance. We have been communicating since then. I have clearly defined my boundaries, and she has mostly respected them. Nevertheless, she seems to be acting as if the significant betrayal never occurred, expecting me to return to my previous easygoing and fun self. I'm finding it challenging to separate her and the events that transpired between us, especially the resentment that has built up due to how she treated me. There were moments when our conversations were enjoyable, but more often than not, I find myself uncertain about how to respond. The notifications from her fail to excite me, and I am reevaluating whether it is feasible to maintain a friendship. On one hand, she was, and perhaps still is, my best friend. On the other, I cannot shake the memories of our past and the negative emotions associated with it. Yesterday, I informed her that I wanted to go no contact for a week to reflect on my feelings and see if I could heal and move beyond our issues. Today, we have not spoken, leaving me with conflicting emotions. I miss her, yet simultaneously, I do not. Thank you for taking the time to read my lengthy account. If you have faced a similar situation, how did you navigate it? Any comments would be appreciated. Story 2. Is my boyfriend, M24, cheating? He responded to 3 texts from his ex after IF22 told him not to talk to her. In summary, when my boyfriend and I first met, he was still recovering from a recent toxic breakup. We openly discussed his healing process. During the initial month, we spent a significant amount of time together, and he believed he had moved on, feeling happy and not thinking about his ex. He occasionally shared stories about his former partner, making some unintentional comparisons that favored me, and I asked him some questions out of curiosity. I wanted to understand what had gone wrong in his previous relationship. He maintained that those stories had no emotional weight for him, as he felt confident he had moved on, even upon reflection. By the second month, we encountered frequent arguments. He was under substantial pressure from work and expressed feelings of being overwhelmed. He admitted to missing his ex, and when I inquired whether it was romantic, he somewhat ambiguously replied yes, despite the fact that they were not in contact. He assured me that he did not wish to rekindle anything with her, recognizing how unhealthy it would be for him. His feelings of being overwhelmed, compounded by our conflicts, led to him expressing that things didn't feel right anymore. We both agreed that he needed a week to reset, particularly as most of our arguments stemmed from my end. I, of course, misinterpreted this need for space and questioned whether he disliked me, to which he again ambiguously responded. Nevertheless, he promised that he would return after clearing his head, assuring me we were still committed as a couple during that time. He took a week off, though I knew it was not a choice for him since he had no intention of going back to her. He mentioned he needed that time to find closure and regain his focus on us. Healing is not a linear process, and he acknowledged that thoughts of his ex resurfaced, necessitating the space. After the week, we reconciled, and I felt confident he had been faithful. He realized that his urge for closure revolved around curiosity about her life and not lingering feelings. He mentioned that he congratulated her on a graduation post an action that would not typically prompt a rekindling, and they exchanged pleasantries about work. There was nothing flirtatious or suggestive exchanged, and he shared all their chats with me to clarify that his curiosity had led to that conversation, but with no premeditated intentions. He learned that she might have to move back home if she didn't secure a job, and since she had previously confided in him about it, his curiosity led to him needing the space to avoid dwelling on her, despite it not being romantic. I distinctly remember calling him after our break and advising him not to engage with her at all. As the months passed, we thrived together. He became increasingly emotionally available, putting in great effort, and our long-distance situation concluded positively. After 3 months, I accessed his phone, which he never hides, and noticed messages from her. When I asked him about it, he handed me his phone. She had reached out to him 3 times on her own over those 4 months since our break. His responses were merely polite. There was nothing flirtatious or suggestive in those exchanges, with her always initiating the conversations. He did send her one meme that referenced an inside joke they had, which was harmless, and referred to her as a penguin, joking about a fun past nickname. Apart from that, he engaged with her inquiries regarding chair recommendations, his job, and his life, just ordinary conversation. When I confronted him about the messages, he argued he didn't view those 3 interactions, where he was merely responding decently without initiating, as significant enough to categorize as conversations. He acknowledged that he should have informed me, admitting it was a mistake, especially since I had requested he refrain from contacting her. I understand that he tends not to ghost individuals and replies to job inquiries, believing in complete transparency. He has expressed no issues with me maintaining contact with my ex, though I choose not to. He has never given me any reason to distrust him and insists he holds no feelings for her, recognizing that his closure stemmed solely from curiosity. He clarified that he does not wish to be friends with her, but he does not desire a hostile relationship either. He emphasized that if speaking to her had been a genuine desire, he would have reached out or skipped returning after our break. He maintains that he did not cross any boundaries. Despite this, he continues to apologize and inquires what actions he can take to ensure my comfort. I suggested he block her, and he agreed, stating he was sorry for not informing me beforehand. He expressed that cutting off individuals without interpersonal issues is significant for him, but he was willing to do it for her since he did not find her important. He affirmed he wouldn't sever ties with anyone else, as he views that as controlling, emphasizing the need for me to have complete trust in him, especially when he believes he has done nothing wrong. He does not oppose being polite to exes since they are individuals as well, asserting that this situation was resolved long ago. He is not in contact with any other ex. He did ultimately block her, explaining that this decision was not solely about the person but about his principles. Nonetheless, he reassured me that my comfort outweighs any principle he upholds, and that he is willingly doing this to ease my concerns, asking me to trust him in this matter. Did he commit infidelity by not telling me? Was there sufficient reason to consider not staying together? His character is remarkably honest and loyal, and he has consistently maintained that his feelings for her ended after the breakup. He believed he had moved on before our connection emerged, asserting that any thoughts of her overwhelmed him during that week. He had also previously expressed that he would never choose her again after experiencing depression due to her behavior, recognizing it as unhealthy for him. Since blocking her, he has not mentioned her at all, and we are content now. I seek clarity about whether he acted dishonestly. I struggle with obsessive-compulsive disorder, and I find myself anxious over everything. He has shown me all the conversations, and I've come to trust that nothing inappropriate occurred. The meme may have been unnecessary, but that was the extent of it. He referred to her as a penguin jokingly, and when she complained about her difficult life, he remarked, "That's why there's only one of you," which I questioned for potential flirty implications. He explained he meant it in that no one would want to be her friend due to her struggles, resulting in there only being one of her. He has always maintained that she is an unhealthy person and that he would never return to her, even if given a chance. I need guidance. Is it possible to maintain friendships with exes? These thoughts persist and burden me, leading to feelings of inadequacy in my ability to help him heal, questioning whether he still yearned for her or needed closure despite it being motivated by curiosity. His principle and intentions have remained consistent, yet my obsessive-compulsive disorder complicates everything, primarily since I had previously inquired about their story, and he expressed confusion over why she had to disrupt their relationship when it was going well, desiring closure on the experience rather than the individual. He reiterated that he did not want her in any capacity. At times, he has also contemplated whether things might have turned out differently with more time and understanding, though all of this occurred before our break. He has been completely engaged since then. It has been a year, and while these issues still linger, he remains the most loyal, caring, and warm person I know. I seek sincere advice because I often see suggestions urging individuals to leave immediately on forums like Reddit. I genuinely hope someone takes the time to read this thoroughly and provide meaningful guidance, as I deeply love him. Story 3. I went for a massage, and my therapist slowly crossed professional boundaries until he was pleasuring me, leaving me shocked and confused. Several months ago, I, 36 years old, female, experienced discomfort that I suspected was due to sciatica. I discovered a massage therapist in my area via Google, a man in his 40s with his own practice, whom I will refer to as Greg. When I visited him and explained the discomfort I was facing, I indicated that it extended from my lower back to the upper part of my hamstring. Essentially, it involved the area around my rear end, which felt somewhat awkward, but I was attending a professional for relief. The massage was excellent, and while getting dressed, I realized that the session lasted around an hour and a half, although I had only paid for an hour when I scheduled it online. On my way out, Greg remarked, "Oh, I thought you had booked for an hour and a half, but don't worry about it. I won't charge you for the extra time." Well, of course, it wasn't my oversight, yet I gave him a generous tip. He suggested I return in 2 weeks, or at least a month for further treatment, so I made another appointment for a few weeks later. Once more, Greg exceeded the hour mark, and I tipped him accordingly. This visit, I noticed that his boundaries were a bit less strict than those of previous therapists. For instance, he lowered the drape completely past my rear, but I figured that it was appropriate since that was where I was experiencing pain. I felt his hands straying closer to my intimate area, including between my cheeks, in comparison to past experiences. Although I hadn't shaved, and at times his hands brushed against my pubic hair, I found him somewhat attractive and didn't mind. After this session, I purchased a package for 6 additional visits and made the payment. When I returned, it was similar to my previous experience, except my sciatica had improved, but there was still considerable work on my glutes, and it seemed like he kept my rear exposed more than necessary. However, I have a slight exhibitionist side, which made it somewhat exciting, and I would be deceptive if I claimed I hadn't indulged in some fantasies. During my 4th session, which was the second in my package of 6, everything began normally. However, while lying on my back, he slid his hand under the drape to massage my stomach a bit. He then asked if I wanted to work on the belly. I had never been asked this question before, but I responded affirmatively, and he placed a small towel over my chest while pulling the drape down further, below the beginning of my pubic hair. He massaged my belly, but gradually moved his hands to my breasts, leaving me in shock as I questioned what was transpiring. He then inquired, "The breasts too?" And I was in disbelief, wondering if this behavior was still within the limits of a professional massage. I barely managed to whisper, "Okay," just before he removed the towel entirely and began to rub my breasts, then shifted his hands down to lower the drape even further, now below my vagina, and started massaging upward from my inner thighs and outer lips, saying, "Let me know if anything makes you uncomfortable." My breathing quickened, my heart raced, and I began to panic because I had trusted him to uphold a professional demeanor, leaving me utterly bewildered. He lifted the drape to cover me as he instructed me to turn onto my stomach, as one typically does during a session. He draped me again, but soon after, he abruptly tore it away and spread my legs apart. He started massaging around my vagina and gradually inched closer until there was no denying that this had strayed far from a conventional massage. At that moment, I thought I might as well embrace it, so I attempted to relax. He stimulated my clitoris, and I was on the verge of climaxing when he inserted a finger and asked if it was acceptable. He inquired whether I was enjoying it and if it was too rough, similar to his inquiries during previous massages. I simply mumbled, "hum," and "mm." I sensed him shifting behind me on the table, felt him moving in closer, lifting my hips, and with his mouth right near me, he asked, "Is this okay?" To which I responded, "MHM." And suddenly he was pleasuring me with his mouth, leaving me in disbelief about the reality of the situation. Almost within a minute, he exclaimed, "There's someone at the door, I'll be right back," and exited the room. When he returned a couple of minutes later, he provided his customary farewell, "We're all done for today. Take your time," but added, "I could do this all night. I promise I don't usually do this. I never do this. This was so beautiful. Please don't tell anyone, not your friends or anyone else." Still in a state of shock, I walked out to find another man sitting in the waiting area, another client awaiting his appointment. I tipped Greg the usual amount and wished him a happy new year. I am sharing this here because it has been over a month, and I have not confided in anyone. I have wanted to discuss it, but I fear that any friends I tell might judge my actions. I am uncertain about my feelings regarding the encounter. On one hand, it resembled something out of a pornographic film and was incredibly exciting, yet on the other hand, I was unprepared for it, and I am astonished that he would jeopardize his entire career for such behavior. I often ponder how frequently he engages in such activities. Now, I have 4 sessions remaining from the package I purchased, and I am unsure if I can or should return, or if I should request a refund. I do not believe I did anything to warrant such conduct. I question whether he might have noticed a wet mark on the table after my previous visits, or something similar. However, I didn't act in a way that would indicate interest, such as shifting the drape, making unnecessary noises, or suggesting I wanted anything beyond a standard massage. It has also crossed my mind that he does not know if I have a partner. I did list my sister as my emergency contact on my intake form, but still, I find myself at a crossroads. Should I go back and continue with these sessions and enjoy the experience? I am single, and I must admit I have indulged in fantasies about it since then, but I do not wish for it to escalate to him having intercourse with me. I have contemplated informing him that I told my boyfriend about the situation, and that he is fine with it as long as I do not have sex with Greg. Should I return and request that he revert to a professional stance? I imagine that would be awkward either way. Am I still obligated to tip him generously or even at all, since he appears to be receiving something from this? That would be akin to paying for sexual services. Should I seek a refund for the remaining sessions, amounting to over $400, possibly with veiled threats of reporting him if he refuses? I genuinely want a massage again soon, as I am experiencing soreness. I do not understand how I ended up in this predicament, nor do I know how to proceed. Part of me feels responsible for what transpired, while another part feels somewhat victimized because, ultimately, I was alone in a room with a man I had compensated and trusted to conduct himself professionally. It's peculiar because it was a sexual fantasy I harbored, but when it transpires in reality, it feels different from the fantasy. This is entirely true, and I genuinely seek advice. I wish I had the capability to write fiction this compelling. I want to express my gratitude to those who took my situation seriously. I believe it is essential for me to report him regardless. Summary: my 36 years old, female, massage therapist, male, in his 40s, engaged in sexual acts with me during our 4th session, without any prior indication on my part, although I found it somewhat pleasurable. I still have 4 sessions remaining from a prepaid package, and I have not disclosed this to anyone, leaving me uncertain about how to move forward. Story 4. How do I fix my marriage, or is it too late? M35 and F34 with 2 kids. I am the male, 35 years old, part of this discussion for a thorough understanding of the perspective you are reading. I apologize for the lengthy explanation as I aim to provide full transparency and hopefully some assistance. My wife and I have been married for just under 5 years. We met in 2018 and are a success story from a dating application. I won't bore you with the specifics, but like many early relationships, ours was filled with happiness, passion, and the excitement of getting to know one another. We got married and purchased a house together in 2020 after a layoff raised questions about my immigration status. We were already engaged at that point, when you know, and decided we wanted to have children together in the coming years. Sadly, we experienced 3 miscarriages for various reasons, but we are now blessed with 2 wonderful children, both under 2 years old. Over the past 3 years, we have certainly faced stresses, but I believe nothing was truly insurmountable. However, it led to us taking out our frustrations on one another. My wife often felt I was not contributing enough at home. I still believe I do, as I don't go out with friends, work from home, and when not working or caring for the children, I am involved in household tasks. I often felt disconnected from her. She seemed uninterested in being affectionate, and any attempts I made to be loving were met with rejection. Our sexual life had vanished completely. At this point, you might be thinking that having children is the main issue, but I have seen friends who manage to maintain their connection and show kindness to each other despite parenthood, which we are lacking. The nice moments we share are rare, often reduced to 5 minutes of connection over a television show before bed. I felt emotionally shattered, worn out from constant arguments, and generally unhappy. It's important to mention that my wife brought up the idea of divorce a few times over a year ago. It always seemed to be a fleeting remark like, "This is difficult, we should probably end it." But we both realized we weren't ready to go that far. I had to travel for work for a week, which isn't common for me, but it was a necessary trip. While I didn't look forward to being away from my daughter or my pregnant wife, I accepted it. During that time, I am perceived as a cheerful and friendly person, usually one of the more sociable members of my team who enjoys fostering a positive atmosphere. I traveled to the local airport with a female friend and colleague. We discussed my home life and how I felt things were progressing, acknowledging the challenges we faced. She suggested considering couples therapy or similar avenues for support. Throughout the trip, messages circulated within the work group, including this colleague, but our conversation included some inappropriate exchanges. I had known her longer than my wife, so I didn't think too much of it, as I was confident that nothing would come of it. The messages included topics about hangovers, the peculiar shower setup in the hotel, with large mirrors, and light-heartedly snuggling as we all felt fatigued after the week. There was even a photo shared after discussing a mutual acquaintance who once saw an inappropriate picture of her. The photo I received showed her clothed but revealing some cleavage, and I responded playfully, stating the man who saw the original image was fortunate. I meant it as a joke, but later realized it was inappropriate. I recognized that I didn't think it was her in the first place, which turned out to be accurate. I deleted the photo and the associated comments, understanding that if the roles were reversed, it would seem inappropriate, and I wanted to avoid unnecessary concern. When I returned home, I expressed to my wife a desire to discuss our issues and find a way to rectify what had gone wrong in our relationship. This request surprised her and sparked confusion and distrust. She ended up looking through my phone, which I don't oppose since we both have complete access to each other's devices. She discovered the messages, including the deleted ones, and accusations followed, with divorce papers being printed and terms like "cheating scoundrel" thrown around. At that moment, I managed to halt the divorce proceedings by pleading with her to allow me the opportunity to prove that I didn't want anything from that interaction. It meant nothing to me, and I had no interest in anyone else. While our relationship was troubled, both of us come from broken families, and I wanted to break that cycle and work towards healing our marriage rather than dismantling it. Since that incident, divorce has been mentioned multiple times a week. Our arguments have reached unprecedented levels, with the meaningful moments we do share stretching only a few minutes, primarily initiated by my attempts to show affection, often resulting in little to no reciprocation. My wife struggles with postpartum anxiety and is self-conscious about her body after giving birth. I strive to support her through her anxiety, which sometimes leads me to feel frustrated about maintaining an excessively sterile home environment, while also trying to help in whatever way I can. I continuously reinforce that I only see her as the beautiful woman I married, especially now as she brought our 2 children into the world. She enjoys working out in the mornings, so I care for our youngest child while the elder is still asleep. I am far from perfect. I constantly hear how much I fail, that nothing I do is acceptable, and that the things I believe to be right are indeed wrong. It's becoming overwhelming, and I am at a loss for what to do. Am I holding on to hope unnecessarily, and should we accept our losses? Was my behavior during the work trip truly reprehensible and beyond forgiveness? Is there something I should be doing differently to improve our situation? I invite questions, as I do not wish to lose my wife or my daily interactions with my children.